All right, this is Rudy, November the 8th, 2016. In Sovereign Edward Lewis Brown's first letter, he sent a 2-page newspaper article from the Concord Monitor from Concord, New Hampshire. And it's dated Friday, June the 8th, 2007. The writers are Margot Sanger-Katz, K-A-T-Z, and Maddie Hanna. He makes a note at the very bottom of the page. He says, "Notice the writer Margot Sanger of eugenics, Margaret Sanger." I don't know if he's saying that this writer is the same person as is associated with Planned Parenthood, or that she just has a name that sounds like her. I don't know the point that he's trying to make, but anyway, the title of it is Feds Gather, Browns Unscathed. There's a huge picture of their house. Looks like it was taken from a helicopter. Underneath the picture it says, "Tax protesters Ed and Elaine Brown watch a helicopter fly by outside their house yesterday in Plainfield." I'm going to read the article now. U.S. Marshals and local police brought armored cars, SWAT teams, and an explosive disposal unit. Planes flew overhead, heavily armed police officers guarded roadblocks, and phone lines were cut. But despite the heavy police presence, marshals said they did not come to the Plainfield home of tax protesters Ed and Elaine Brown yesterday to arrest them. Instead, U.S. Marshal Stephen Monier said police were in the area to do surveillance on Ed Brown and his supporters while an IRS criminal investigation unit seized a building the couple owned 10 miles away. We needed to know where he was, and we needed to know where his supporters were," Monier said to a group of reporters stationed by a blockade about 2 miles from the Browns' home on Center of Town Road. Monier said the marshals and IRS agents were acting on a warrant issued earlier this week, which allowed the Treasury Department to seize the building that housed Elaine Brown's West Lebanon dental practice. Agents wearing IRS CID vests were visible in front of the office complex yesterday, but they could not speak to reporters. Cars and trucks parked in the driveway included license plates from Connecticut, Massachusetts, New York, and New Jersey. An officer with a sniper rifle was stationed on a second-story balcony. While agents searched and secured the office building in the morning, Monier said marshals patrolled the perimeter of the Browns' 110-acre property during the surveillance. A marshal encountered a man whom he identified as a Brown supporter walking a dog. The man, who was not named, was detained and questioned. Monier, now I'm going to go on to page 2. At the top of page 2 appears to be a picture of a man in a window. It looks like it said Brown. It says, "Above, Ed Brown talks to reporters from the second floor of his home in Plainfield yesterday." Below, a picture of a police officer with an AR-15. What looks to me like it's an AR-15 anyway. Below, a police officer watches near the intersection of State Road and Route 12A in Plainfield. Browns, continued from page A1. Okay. Monier said he was released yesterday afternoon. Unfortunately, it required U.S. Marshal Service personnel during that encounter to take him into custody, Monier said, because he essentially discovered us. Monier didn't explain why marshals needed to act on the warrant yesterday, saying only that there were ongoing concerns about the security of the building. A few hours later, after the police had left, Ed Brown said that the dog walker had been a plumber and that the dog, a young shepherd named Zoe, was his. Arms resting on a second-story windowsill, Brown said he was not aware of the extensive police activity nearby, but he had noticed that his phone and internet service had been disconnected and discovered his dog running home about an hour after she left on a walk with his friend, whom he also would not name. Brown said he saw planes flying overhead Wednesday evening and in an audio recording posted on a website yesterday morning. Brown reported armed vehicles driving near his home. I guess we've got a lot of paranoia among our Freemason police, Brown said from his window. Big boys with bigger toys. That's all that amounts to. The Browns were convicted in January of multiple federal felonies related to their refusal to pay income tax for nearly 10 years. The Browns, who contend that no laws require them to pay taxes, dismiss the court's finding as a fiction and describe the judge, Stephen McAuliffe, as a criminal. Both Browns were sentenced to prison sentences of more than 5 years, but they have resisted capture, remaining holed up in their hilltop home for several months. Their case has attracted the attention of several fringe groups throughout the country, including tax protesters, militias, and the Free State Project. The Browns supporters have maintained websites with frequent updates, sponsor a daily internet radio show called Ed Brown Under Siege, and communicate about the case through internet message boards, email lists, and local meetings. In January, when Ed Brown first abandoned the tax evasion trial, he warned supporters that the situation might turn into another Waco. Since then, he has repeated that any attempt to arrest him could turn into a violent confrontation. In the last few months, the Browns have entertained visitors from Tennessee, New York, and Hawaii, among other states, who have offered them support, advice, and supplies. Those gifts have included weapons, Monitor said yesterday. In recent weeks, internet chatter about the couple had quieted down, but yesterday the web was abuzz with news, much of it incorrect about the happenings in Plainfield. One website reported that the Brown house was on fire, while others said it was under siege. There were multiple calls for supporters to rush to the Plainfield home to show solidarity. Ed Brown said the events did not change his perspective. "I'm not worried about anything. What are they going to do, send me to God sooner?" he asked. But a few minutes later, he issued another warning to officers who might try to arrest him. "I would say to the marshal and all those people responsible for any unlawful action to be very apprehensive and very nervous about conducting any criminal activity against our land or ourselves." Brown said, "We are very reciprocal people. You do us good, we do you good. You do us bad, we gonna do you bad. It's that simple." Monitor said he will continue to communicate with the Browns and encourage them to surrender as he has since January. Flanked yesterday by the Washington, D.C. spokesman for the U.S. Marshal Service, he said the armored vehicles and explosives equipment are not indicative of a charge in strategy. "When you roll out with an operation, you want to be prepared for every encounter," he said. Though marshals cut the phone lines and an internet connection at the fortified concrete house yesterday, Ed Brown said that he has no concerns about the couple's ability to live independently. The house has its own well, and solar wind generators make it able to operate off the grid. Brown said yesterday that he has an extensive food supply, which includes gourmet items. Brown also has a cell phone now, thanks to a journalist who tossed it to him through the window on request. Aaron Noble, an editor at the local Connecticut Valley Spectator, agreed to loan Brown his phone for the night. "Do you have a charger for that?" Noble asked Brown following the handoff. A few minutes later, Elaine Brown turned up live on the radio, telling listeners she and her husband were safe but in need of a long-term communication solution. Callers to the show discussed plans to bring disposable cell phones. Neither Brown nor Monitor would say how many supporters were at the Brown residence yesterday, but one supporter, Sereno Gonzalez, a former military contractor who moved from Texas to live with the Browns several weeks ago, reported last week that he had purchased a .50 caliber rifle, a weapon frequently used by military snipers with rounds a half-inch in diameter. Elaine Brown told listeners yesterday that Gonzalez was still at the house. I get sad knowing not everyone has one," Gonzalez wrote on his MySpace page. "Then I think about everyone that is not even close to being ready." The Associated Press contributed information to this story. All right, that's the news article, and we'll continue to investigate and get up to speed on the Ed and Elaine Brown case. They've spent 9 years in prison, so we're going to do our best to educate ourselves and educate others.